As many of you may know, I made a video last year where I talked about the relationship between Luz Noceda and Amity Blight. If you watched my previous video on Lumity, then you probably know that their relationship evolved dramatically over the course of Season 1. They started out as rivals, and then they became friends, and then they shared a beautiful dance together in the episode Enchanting Gromfright, where it was revealed that Amity had a crush on Luz, and that her biggest fear was being rejected by the girl that had stolen her heart. It's been a year since the release of the one where Lumity made history, and a lot has happened between these two since that shocking revelation in Enchanting Gromfright, so I thought it would be fun to talk about how they went from being just friends to an actual couple. This video will detail Lumity's relationship between the episodes Win It Like Witches and Eclipse Lake. Before I start, I want to give a fair warning to those who have never watched the show before. I'm going to be talking about some pretty major spoilers, so here's your spoiler alert: you have been warned. So, without further ado, let's talk about how Luz and Amity went from best friends to girlfriends. This episode is partly about Amity struggling to come to terms with the fact that she likes Luz as more than a friend. It's important to understand that Amity is experiencing emotions that she has never felt before, and that's because she has been taught to completely suppress her emotions and never show any sort of weakness, which is why she has such a hard time acting normally around Luz. At one point in this episode, she gets so flustered that when Luz comes to ask for her help in the Grudgeby game that she challenged Basha to on behalf of Willow, she literally gay panics off the screen. The mere thought of seeing Luz in a Grudgeby uniform completely overwhelms her because she doesn't know how to process the intense emotions that she is feeling. We as the viewing audience know that Amity has a massive crush on Luz, and we also know that she has never felt this way about anyone in her entire life. Luz legitimately makes Amity happy. When Luz is around her, she can be the kind of person she wants to be, instead of being the kind of person her parents want her to be. Amity was a very unhappy and miserable person before Luz arrived on the Boiling Isles, so to say that Luz has changed her life for the better would be an understatement, which is why the idea of Amity confessing to Luz about how she truly feels about her is completely out of the question at this point in time, because if you watched Enchanting Gromfright, then you know that Amity's biggest fear was Luz rejecting her. In addition to the romantic angst I just described, we also get to learn a little bit more about Amity's past as a Grudgeby captain, and how her win-at-all-cost mentality got her teammates hurt when she decided to do a Thornfall to help Hexside win the Grudgeby championship over Glandis High. Luz and Amity get a little too close for comfort, which causes Amity to fall over and blush like a tomato. If Enchanting Gromfright somehow didn't convince you that Amity had a crush on Luz, this should confirm it. This episode firmly establishes how far Amity has come as a character since the events of I Was a Teenage Abomination. She teams up with Willow and Luz in their game of Grudgeby against Basha. This is incredibly significant because this is something the old Amity would have never done, and when Basha tells her that she has ruined her social life by choosing to be friends with Willow and Luz, she responds by saying that she has made it better because of her decision to be friends with them. In the scene before this, Amity told Willow and Gus all of the things she likes about Luz, which is not only vital to the episode's plot because she needs to convince Willow and Gus to help her save Luz from being used as target practice by Basha, it's also vital in the development of their relationship because Amity is essentially revealing that she loves Luz without actually saying it. Amity's love for Luz becomes even more evident when she does a Thornfall to help Willow and Luz win their Grudgeby game against Basha, and ends up breaking her leg in the process. Luz offers to carry Amity, and as we've seen multiple times over the course of this episode, Amity gets completely flustered and gay panics. As a matter of fact, when Luz picks her up off the ground, all she can muster out is, "Oh, wow, sports." This episode ends with a montage, and at the end of that montage we see Amity visiting the Owl House, which firmly establishes her as a regular part of the gang, and if this doesn't prove how far Amity has come as a character, then quite frankly I don't know what does. Odalia is the parental equivalent of Gideon from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and I say that because Odalia uses a mind control bracelet to get Amity to do her bidding in the same way Gideon used a mind control chip to get Ramona to come back to him. Odalia and Alador are the owners of Blight Industries, where they create abominations and sell them to the highest bidders. If you're wondering why Amity is a part of the Abomination Coven, it's probably because her parents forced her into it, due to the fact that Blight Industries Industries is a subsidiary of the Abomination Coven. The reason why Odalia is mind-controlling Amity with a bracelet is because Little Miss Perfect's recent performance in school has been a little lackluster, so she is forcing Amity to be the presenter for their Abomination investor presentations in exchange for her and Alador looking the other way in regards to her recent lackluster performance at school. As you can predictably imagine, Odalia finds out the real reason why Amity has been so distracted. It's because she has been spending a lot more time with Luz, Willow, and Gus. Odalia doesn't like this revelation because she knows that her control over Amity is slowly starting to slip away, so she decides to fight back in the most petty way possible by using her power and influence to get Luz, Willow, and Gus expelled. She specifically lists 3 examples of Luz, Willow, and Gus being dangerous and irresponsible, such as Luz pretending to be Willow's abomination and I was a teenage abomination, Gus destroying detention in Something Ventured, Something Framed, and the whole Grom fiasco in Enchanting Gromfright. I'm not going to mince words when I say that Amity's relationship with her parents is incredibly toxic and emotionally abusive, and that fact was emphasized when Amity didn't stand up for Luz, Willow, and Gus when they were unfairly expelled, and that's because she didn't feel comfortable standing up to her parents because she is afraid of them. After all, these are the same people that forced Amity to end her friendship with Willow because they thought she was weak, so if they were willing to do that, what else are they capable of? And when you consider the position Amity is in, you can't exactly blame her for not saying anything, because Odalia is an egotistical and manipulative control freak, and Alador is a complete dunce who is off in his own little universe most of the time and just goes along with whatever his wife wants to do, so Amity had no choice but to go along with her parents' cruel pettiness. Luckily, Luz understands the precarious position Amity is in and doesn't get mad at her for not saying anything when she was unfairly expelled, which is a testament to how supportive and understanding of a character Luz is. In typical Luz fashion, she decides to try and fix the problem by striking a deal with Odalia to take Amity's place as the presenter for the Blight Industries Abomination investor presentation, in exchange for Odalia using her power and influence to allow her, Willow, and Gus back into Hexside. She willingly uses herself as target practice and gets through the vast majority of the presentation. For a brief moment, it looks like Luz has saved the day once again, but it wouldn't be a television show if it were that easy, because Odalia unleashes the Abomatron, which is an abomination weapon of mass destruction that does not stop until its target is eliminated. Odalia is so obsessed with wanting to control every aspect of Amity's life that she is completely willing to murder Luz to get that control back. Does Odalia honestly have a soul? Because she is so cruel, manipulative, and soulless that she gives Buck Cluck and Mother Gothel a run for their money in terms of being the worst Disney parent ever. And the crazy thing about Odalia's plan is that she would have succeeded if it wasn't for Little Miss Perfect. Amity finally musters up the courage to stand up to her parents and comes to Luz's defense. She breaks Odalia's mind control bracelet, and then she defies her when she orders her to stay away from Luz. This is a very significant moment for Amity as a character, because she has firmly become the person that she wants to be, rather than the fake and unhappy person her parents molded her into, and that's mostly because of Luz's positive influence. If that somehow didn't convince you, she literally threatens to destroy her parents' precious Abomatron in order to ensure that Luz, Willow, and Gus would be allowed back into Hexside. By doing all of this, she has ridden herself of the toxic relationships that have dominated her life, and is replacing them with healthier ones, and if it wasn't for Luz, she would have never had the incentive or the courage to stand up for herself and fight for what she really wanted, which was to chart her own course in life. If you've watched The Owl House long enough, then you know that Amity is an absolute stickler when it comes to following the rules. She freaked out when Willow used Luz as her abomination in order to get a passing grade in their abomination class. She freaked out when Luz cheated in their witches duel, although to be fair, that was all on Ida because she is a part of the Bad Girl Coven. And she freaked out when Luz, Edric, and Amira broke into the library after hours and ended up finding her secret hideout, which just so happened to contain her diary. So it came as a genuine surprise when Amity went out of her way to willingly break a rule in order to help Luz out. Luz is trying to find a book on Philip Whittabane, who was the first human to live on the Boiling Isles, in the hopes that she can find information on a portal that can transport her back to Earth, so she decides to go to the library to ask Amity for help. Amity decides to use her staff ID card to open the Forbidden Stacks, in order to search for that book, despite knowing that if they get caught, she will be fired. I want to emphasize that Amity's love for Luz is so strong at this this point that she is willing to put her job on the line in order to help Luz achieve her ultimate goal. This is yet another example of Amity doing something that the old Amity would have never done. She acknowledges this when she and Luz get caught by her boss Malthus, and she ends up getting fired. She tells Luz with tears in her eyes that ever since she arrived on the Boiling Isles, her presence makes her do stupid things and that she wishes it didn't. Luz replies by saying the exact same thing, and at this point it's become incredibly obvious that these two care about each other a lot and are willing to stick their necks out for each other. Ever since Luz arrived on the Boiling Isles, Amity's seemingly perfect life has gotten confusing, and because of that, she has been thinking about things she has never thought about before and is feeling things that she has never felt before. Amira tells Amity that the way she feels about Luz is not a bad thing because before her arrival, she wasn't happy. Who could have guessed that pressuring your daughter to be Little Miss Perfect with the green hair and the straight A's, and then telling her that she couldn't show any sort of weakness would have such disastrous consequences. By the way, Amity dyes her hair pink, which is incredibly significant if you've been paying attention to her character development. In every episode she has appeared in up until this point, her hair was always green. Odalia has green hair, so guess who had to have green hair as well? The fact that Amity decided to dye her hair pink is the most clear-cut example of her retaking control of her own life, and it is absolutely awesome. Luz gets Amity's job back by going through a series of trials. Amity is obviously delighted by the fact that Luz went out of her way to go through those trials in order to convince Malthus to give her a second chance. She later goes on to say that Luz always has a way of sneaking her way into people's hearts, and then she kisses Luz on the cheek, and it is at this moment that Luz finally realizes that Amity likes her as more than just a friend, and that absolutely terrifies her because she feels exactly the same way. When I first saw the title for this episode, I genuinely believed that it was going to be a lighthearted filler episode in the vein of Once Upon a Swap. Season 2 had been incredibly sad and depressing up until this point, so I thought this episode would be a way to give the viewing audience a much-needed palate cleanse. That assumption turned out to be wrong because this would turn out to be one of the show's most pivotal episodes. I think you all know where this is going. The plot of this episode centers around Hooty writing a letter to Lilith where he describes how he got Kin, Ida, and Luz to face their fears. For the purpose of this video, we're going to talk about how Hooty got Luz and Amity together as a couple. Luz likes Amity as more than a friend and wants to ask her out, but she is torn between her pursuit of true love and trying to build a portal to get back to Earth. She wants to confess how she truly feels about Amity, but doesn't want to come off as cheesy because she believes that a smart, classy, and cool person like Amity deserves to be asked out in a breathtaking, emotional, and real way. Hooty knows that Luz wants to ask Amity out because he believes he is attuned to other people's emotions, and more importantly, he is the heart and soul of the Owl House and has eyes and ears everywhere, so it makes total sense that he would know that Luz has it bad for Amity. Why else would he kidnap Amity and then create a tunnel of love to make it look like Luz is pouring her heart out to Amity in the most over-the-top way imaginable? To say that Luz was absolutely mortified by Hooty's tunnel of love would be a massive understatement. As I previously stated, she wanted to ask Amity out in a way that didn't make her look cheesy. Hooty's intervention was the exact opposite of that, which causes her to believe that Amity thinks she is a total loser for going all out in an over-the-top display of affection, even though she had nothing to do with it. Amity, on the other hand, is absolutely delighted by what she thinks is Luz's elaborate declaration of her love for her. That illusion would be shattered when Luz destroyed the tunnel of love out of sheer embarrassment. From Luz's perspective, she did it because she believed Amity deserved better than to be asked out in such an over-the-top display of affection. But from Amity's perspective, she believes that Luz's destruction of the tunnel of love is her way of saying that she doesn't feel the same way, and that they will never be anything more than just friends, and that the idea of them dating is stupid. Hooty freaks out over this and goes completely apeshit. Luz admits to Ida that Hooty was trying to help her ask Amity out, and that he freaked out because he believed he had destroyed their relationship. After some encouragement from Ida, she finally works up the courage to ask Amity out. Amity happily accepts, and they end up holding hands in a giant, heart-shaped crater while Hooty watches from above and cries tears of joy. What makes all of this even sweeter is the fact that Hooty explicitly refers to Amity as Luz's new girlfriend, which firmly cements their status as a couple, therefore making Lumity officially canon. It's safe to say that Luz has come a long way from the day she was referred to as Willow's abomination then. Even though Amity finally got what she wanted, she still feels the need to prove her worth to Luz, which is why she wants to prove what an awesome girlfriend she is by leading Ida and Kin on a mission to Eclipse Lake to find Titan's blood, which is used to power transfer portals. Titan's blood is the most powerful form of magic on the Boiling Isles, and it is supposedly contained within the caves of Eclipse Lake. Amity is determined to find it in order to ensure that Luz can find her way back home. Luz ends up getting sidelined for the vast majority of this episode because she is sick with the common mold, which is the Boiling Isles equivalent of the flu. This episode does a brilliant job showcasing Amity's deep-seated insecurity. Even though she has escaped the toxic relationships that have dominated the vast majority of her life, she still struggles when it comes to ridding herself of the toxic mentality those relationships created. Hunter, aka the Golden Guard, plants a seed of doubt in Amity's mind when she tells him that she is an awesome girlfriend, and he responds by saying, "Has she told you that yet?" It's important to emphasize that Amity is a character that seeks validation and approval, and has seen every opportunity in her life as a way to continue justifying her existence. Luz is arguably the most important thing in her life, and after so many years of not having real friends, let alone a real relationship, she doesn't want to let the love of her life down because, as Hunter puts it, there's nothing worse than disappointing someone who thinks you're special. At one point in this episode, Amity legitimately begins to believe that Luz will break up with her if she doesn't deliver the desired results. Now, we all know that Luz would never do that to Amity, but at the same time, we also know that Amity is afraid of failing because she was taught that anything less than success and being the best at everything was a failure. These fears would turn out to be completely unfounded because she misinterpreted the Tamagotchi messages Luz was sending, which were, "You are rad, fool's blood is bad, are you okay, and come home." These messages reinforce the fact that Luz is a supportive, caring, and understanding person who always looks out for the well-being of the people she cares about. It's also impressive when you realize that she wrote all of these messages on a frickin' Tamagotchi while she was sick and not her usual fun-loving self. Anyways, it turns out that the prospect of Titan's blood being contained within the caves of Eclipse Lake were the same as the Toronto Maple Leafs advancing past the first round of the playoffs. It was a lie. When Hunter digs his own grave because he can't stand the thought of going back to his uncle, Emperor Bellows, empty-handed, Amity tells him that there are people out there that won't make you feel worthless and that you just have to let yourself meet them. This display of sympathy and empathy nearly works, until Hunter sees the portal key she is carrying and tries to take it for himself out of desperation. For the sake of context, Amity took Luz's portal key at the beginning of the episode and promised to give it back to her when she was all better. After a short duel, Hunter forces Amity to hand over Luz's portal key by telling her that the Emperor's Coven knows where to find her and Luz. With no other choice in the matter, Amity reluctantly gives Hunter the portal key, but she does so on the condition that he and the rest of the Emperor's Coven stays away from Luz. When Amity returns to the Owl House, Luz gives her a big old hug after recovering from the common mold and for the very first time calls Amity her awesome girlfriend. As for the portal key, it turns out that Amity crushed it before handing it over to Hunter, and as it turns out, Luz's portal key contained the most powerful form of magic on the Boiling Isles. If you had told me a year ago that Luz and Amity would be girlfriends, I would have laughed in your face and then asked what kind of drugs you were on. But by some divine miracle, we are actually talking about Lumity being an actual thing in the year 2021. And the fact that I'm sitting here writing a script for a video where I analyze their relationship makes it even more insane. What makes their relationship work so well is the fact that they accept each other for who they are. On one hand, Luz is weird, quirky, endlessly optimistic, insanely creative, and has a penchant for diving headfirst into dangerous situations to protect the people she cares about. While on the other hand, Amity is incredibly smart and is a huge nerd because of her love of the Good Witch Azura book series, but she also has anxiety, insecurity, a fear of failure, and a lot of emotional baggage due to her incredibly fucked up childhood. But despite all of that, they were able to find love and solace in each other, and that is a true testament to how far their relationship has come in such a short amount of time. I truly believe that Lumity is a huge step forward for LGBTQ representation in animation, and not just because there's an openly acknowledged romantic relationship between two teenage girls in a cartoon that airs on the Disney Channel, but because they treat them as equals. Luz being a bisexual and Amity being a lesbian is a part of their respective characters, but it's not their defining character trait. As you've seen me describe in this video, Luz and Amity's respective personalities are complex and multifaceted, and is not dominated or defined by their sexuality. LGBTQ relationships in cartoons will become commonplace one day, and it won't be seen as controversial or inappropriate. It will be seen as normal, and I sincerely hope that happens because it would make the medium of animation and the real world a much better place.